Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you this morning, and it was great to catch up with part of your executive team to talk about education and the reauthorization of the Education and Elementary Secondary Education Act. First, I want to say congratulations to Mary on her re-election. It's something that all politicians aspire to, running unopposed. So thank you very much, Mary, for your leadership and your contribution. You know, it's great to be here in Washington, particularly on such a bright and sunny morning, and to see so many educators and part of our education system across Washington State. It reminds me of a story about how God disappeared for 7 days. And when he came back, Michael the archangel said, "God, where have you been?" He said, "I've been creating a great place of balance." And Michael said, "Balance?" He said, "Yes, there's going to be a hot place and a cold continent. There's going to be a flat place and there's going to be a hilly place, but everything is going to be in balance." And so Michael said, "Well, what's that there?" And God said, "Oh, that's the great state of Washington." It has Mount Rainier, it has Puget Sound, it has wheat fields, and it has the most bright, energetic, get-it-done people on the planet. And Michael said, "Well, I thought you said Earth was going to be a great place of balance." And God said, "Yeah, wait till you see the other Washington." So that's just my way of saying I'm glad to be here today and to be in this Washington, and I want you to know I know the difference. In that Washington, they like to regulate, and in this Washington, we like to innovate, and I'm going to make sure we continue to innovate in education. Part of our challenge is that we've done some good things in Washington, D.C. lately. If you think, for example, of what we were able to do in the stimulus bill to increase Pell Grants to a maximum of $5,500 from $4,800. If you look at what we were able to do for early childhood education, if you looked at what we were able to do for IDEA, if you looked at what we were able to do for child nutrition. But I don't have to tell you this, we are challenged by these economic times, both here in Washington State and nationally, but we must keep in mind that investment in education and the workforce that it takes to deliver that will help us secure a better economic future for all Americans. I know that many of you understand that in the other Washington there is a lot of dialogue about ideas like privatizing Social Security or putting Medicare on vouchers, or, as we have seen in some of the individual states, getting rid of collective bargaining. I can tell you this, I'm going to continue to fight to make sure that collective bargaining is the law of the land, not just here in Washington State. So let's talk about some of the challenges and let's talk about some of the solutions. In this economy, our education system is already stretched, and we expect more and more out of educators, and we're providing them less and less resources to get the job done. And so what we need to do is make sure that we continue at the federal level to make investments. And while I'm very anxious, I should say excited about STEM education because it's important, and I've seen great programs of STEM education around our state, both in Eastern Washington and Southwest Washington and right here in the Puget Sound area. But it's also important to make investments in other parts of education. The future of our country will not just need those scientists, but they will need, and engineers, but they will need professional writers, painters, and teachers. We will need teachers. So we need to make an investment in all of those. So what are we fighting for? Well, I want to make sure that we continue to give the flexibility and creativity that education deserves. The state has made great strides with innovative public schools, challenging students in every way, and fitting and tailoring to their individual needs. Washington State has hundreds of cutting-edge public schools which have resulted in such things as Aviation High School, and a Spanish immersion program in Bellevue, and a Vancouver School of Arts and Academics, and a Medicine Wheel School Academy in Spokane. Since 1935, Washington State has been investing and innovating in our public schools, and our state should not be penalized for those great strides. It should be rewarded. In 2009, Arne Duncan announced the requirements that schools must follow for the eligibility of the $3.5 billion in school improvement grants, and Washington was one of the first states in the country to apply. And yet 50 schools were identified as low performing, but in 2011 only 10 were funded with the school improvement grants. Funding to assist low-performing schools should be distributed through an allocation formula or funding formula rather than a competitive grant process. And one educator I met recently told me, quote, "Students should not have to compete for good education," and I couldn't agree more. We need to have flexible options for implementing those grant monies, and the school improvement grants are impractical, problematic when it comes to the innovation that we want to continue here in Washington State. So I want to leave you with the notion that I am going to be working hard when it comes to the reauthorization of this legislation. Just a couple other things that I want you to know. I think gas prices are too high, and I think federal regulators ought to do their job and make sure that they police these markets to make sure that consumers are protected. And I want to make sure that we don't balance the budget on the backs of individual families who are trying to provide for a future of the American dream. Now, I know many people who are doing research on this issue of what is the American dream. And what they found out is it's not really a house with a white picket fence. It's not really this notion of a infrastructure. What they're finding out is that what people mean when they talk about the American dream is they mean that they want to have hope for the future of their family, for their children to have better opportunities. Education is the key path to that better opportunity. Trust me, I know. I went to school on a Pell Grant, was the first person in my family to graduate. Thank you for what you do. I'm going to continue to make investments in education and work with you through these toughest economic times to make sure our country is stronger by building a more innovative, robust education system. Thank you for all that you do. Teachers, classified individuals, everybody part of the education system. Let's move forward with flexibility and innovation. Thank you all very much.